Hello, everybody. It's me, the Lego Dude, and we are finally starting the live stream now. I just need a couple minutes to get everything organized because it seems there appears to be a problem with the presentation of the live stream. The video feed is not going through right now with just the thank you banner presented. So I'll be getting that fixed up in a minute right now. All right, everybody. If you can hear me, make sure to say so in the chat, and I'll be responding to comments. If you can't hear, make sure to say as well so I can get everything sorted out just before we start the live stream. Okay, we are now going to be starting live stream in a minute or two. So in today's live stream, this is the first live stream I've done in almost a year. We are going to be building the Lego World Cup, as we can see here, and we are also going to be doing a preview and prediction for the World Cup semifinal, which is going to be taking place tomorrow. This is going to occur between the national teams for France and for Spain. So the World Cup semifinals, as it stands, after all the group stages, round of 32, round of 16, and quarterfinals, have four teams left. We have France versus Spain. We have Argentina versus England. These are the four highest rated teams in the world based off FIFA's rankings, and I thought it would be good to build the actual World Cup while the World Cup is just finishing up. So we'll be getting started in a minute or two. I'll give it another minute or so that more people can join in before we start building the World Cup as well. So as we can see, we have the World Cup here. It's pretty good design as far as I can tell, and it's definitely going to be really exciting to build it. So we'll just wait another minute or so, and then we'll get started with building it and with previewing the match. The live stream, just some more information about the live stream while we're waiting. The live stream will last at most about 2 hours or so, and then I'll hopefully be live streaming again tomorrow to react to the France versus Spain match, which is taking place then, and to also do a preview for the Argentina versus England match, which is definitely also going to be very exciting. So let's just look at a couple comments here. Hello to you too. Hello, everybody who's popped into the stream. How long do you think this will take, Lego Dude? I think this will take definitely a while to build. I'm expecting to maybe get a decent chunk of it done today, but I expect the live stream, it'll take probably 3 or 4 live streams to build, which works fine because there's 2 World Cup semifinal matches to look at, and then after that, it'll be the World Cup final. And then, of course, if we really need to do it too, we can do a live stream to predict the 3rd place match, which will occur between the losers of the 2 semifinals. Yes, the games have been exciting so far, especially some of the recent matches with let's see some of the just going through the quarterfinals really quickly before we start. There was France versus Morocco. Morocco lost to France 2-0. There was Switzerland versus Argentina. Argentina won in extra time. There was Spain versus Belgium, if I recall correctly. I think Spain scored a last-minute winner. And there was also what was the other match? England, right? England versus Norway. Right, Norway had control for large parts of the match, but England were able to get it done in extra time. So the quarterfinals, especially, were good matches overall. So what's this here? A new comment. I think France will get 2 out of 1. Well, we'll get to the predictions in a minute. For now, though, we are going to be getting started with building the World Cup. Let me just make sure the camera's all in order. Okay, as we can see, we have the box here for the World Cup, and we're going to start the build now. So bear with me because we might have to adjust as we go because the box is large size. And here we have all the bags for the World Cup. So we have bag 7, 9, 14, all the bags we can think of. Right now, we're just going to organize them and get started with bag 1. So obviously I didn't plan the logistics as good as I could have, but here we have bag one. We'll be getting started now. Let's just point the camera downwards. Bag one. Now it's time to find the instructions. Instruction manual inside a big paper bag. It's pretty cool. And now we have the instruction manual for the World Cup. It's extremely hefty. It's basically a book. It is definitely going to be the largest Lego set I've ever built, so it is definitely going to take quite a while. So let me just find a good place to put the instructions so we can get started and so that we can do a preview of the match while we're building. If anybody has any more comments or questions while we're building, make sure to leave them in the chat. First bag's a bit small, but it has all the pieces we need to build the base of the World Cup, I think, or at least a small stand that's near it. Just make sure the audio is still all good. He's almost rolled away. We need to make sure that won't be happening. So with the World Cup here, we have what appears to be a minifigure. So this is the exclusive minifigure that comes with the World Cup that has a, as we can see here, has a print of the world. Not sure if the camera can see it. It's a camera is a print of the World Cup on the sweater, which is pretty cool. We have another comment coming in. Yes, this set was for the World Cup specifically, for it to be built during. Oh, let's put that back on the screen. For it to be built on during the World Cup, so that we could talk about the World Cup on the YouTube channel while also building the World Cup Lego to keep everybody interested, because it is, of course, a Lego channel first of all, but it's also nice to be able to talk about the World Cup, so we can combine the two. And here we have a miniature World Cup too. That's pretty cool. Oh, it goes like that. All right, so this is the minifigure included in the set. And now we can actually get started with the build. So I guess just doing a quick review of all the matches that have happened so far. The World Cup has had over 100 matches. This is the biggest World Cup ever, with an expansion to 48 teams. So it's definitely been interesting seeing everything going on. There's definitely some controversy before the World Cup about whether the expansion from 32 to 48 teams would affect the quality of the matches, but I think it's had I think it's actually gone pretty well, with most of the teams that have played deserving to be there and playing pretty well, except for a couple, even the teams which lost heavily, such as in the group stages way back at the beginning, such as Curacao to Germany 7-0. They still did pretty decently in other matches, such as when they drew with Ecuador and put up a respectable performance versus the Ivory Coast. And so how the beginning of the World Cup worked, of course, was there was a set of 12 groups, and then the 2 best teams from each group would go into the round of 32, as well as the 8 best performing teams in 3rd place. So this resulted in some exciting action on the final day of the group stages. such as when Austria played Algeria. And if either one of them won, one of them would be knocked out, and Iran would go through to the round of 32. And so what happened was the match was surprisingly extremely exciting. It had been predicted beforehand that it could be quite dull so that both teams could ensure that they went through, but it ended up being 3-3 with two goals, with a goal scored by each team in extra time. And not extra time, added time, which was quite an exciting match. So then we get to the round of 32. A lot of exciting matchups. Let's see if I can recall a couple of the more bigger results. Yeah, we had Paraguay. Paraguay knocked out Germany in the round of 32. That was a pretty good match. They did defend for large parts of the match, but they did good to keep the Germans occupied. And then what else happened in the round of 32? Oh, yeah, and Paraguay ultimately defeated Germany on penalties with one of Germany's players skying a penalty straight into the stratosphere, which was kind of hilarious if you saw it in real time. And then after that, another big result was Morocco defeating the Netherlands. A big result because the Netherlands were favorites going into the match, even though Morocco are pretty evenly matched. It's just since the Netherlands are an established football team, it was kind of expected that even though it would be tough, they'd go through. But Morocco were able to get the job done and knock them out on penalties with their goalkeeper, who is a specialist at saving penalties. We got the first bit done here. Let's take a look at the comments again. Z, have you thought of making a Lego version of you so you can be literally a Lego dude? I've thought of it, but I'm not sure how I'd go about doing that. It's definitely something I've considered, though, and definitely something I'd go back to take a look at maybe at some time in the future, for sure, so that I can actually have a visual representation of myself for the channel without actually showing my face. Because the whole point of the channel is to focus on the content of what I make and not who I am, of course, because I think the best idea for the channel is to make sure it's about everything that we're going over with the Legos. But if I can include a visual representation of as a Lego person, I think that would be fine too. See, that's funny. Okay, have you thought of making a Lego version of you so you can literally? Oh, it's the same comment, but yeah, same response. It would be definitely interesting, and I think it could work out for the channel, and it's definitely something I'd look at. So let me just pull up a couple more of the World Cup results so that we can talk about those too before we actually get to the match preview. So I can jog my memory. Okay, just talking about a couple more of the other miscellaneous interesting results before we get to covering the two main teams we're supposed to be focusing on today. We had Portugal beat Croatia in the round of 32 of the World Cup. Portugal have performed poorly compared to the quality of their team, and that definitely showed here with Croatia pushing them all the way, with the match ending 2-1. And at the end of the match, there was quite a controversial decision when Croatia scored a goal that was marked offside, even though, from what could be seen, only the hair of the player seemed to have touched the ball at most. Apparently, though, the sensors that FIFA has inside the ball at the World Cup was able to sense that the ball had been touched, so the goal was marked as being offside. Now, if anybody in the chat doesn't know what offside means, it's when you have a player that the ball is passed to the player and they're ahead of all the opponent's players, which is considered to be a breaking of the rules because it would be unfair for them to just go as far forward as they want without having any limits on that. So that's what that rule means. And so that's how that match ended, with Portugal advancing to the round of 16 after that. Croatia, though, definitely put up a good fight against them. And Croatia have always definitely punched above their weight when it comes to the World Cup. And I expect them, even though a lot of their best players are going to be retiring at this one, as they were after this one, as they were quite old, I do expect them to definitely do decently at the next World Cup, like they always do. It's just that this one, they unfortunately lost to Portugal. Portugal were not that good, not that convincing, which makes sense why they ended up losing to Spain. But we'll get to that later when we talk about Spain specifically. For now, though, we'll move on to a couple of other interesting results. We got to have time to talk about a lot of matches before we get to the main ones. Okay, we got a couple more comments coming in. Your channel picture is Yoda, so maybe you can be Yoda. That's not a half bad idea. I could put up Yoda to represent me on the Lego channel. I could definitely consider that. I could just stick a Yoda minifigure on any of the thumbnails I make and give it different expressions, which would be hilarious. So that'd be a good idea. How are you doing it with no instructions? I have the instruction manual over here on the side, actually, which is I just don't want it to cover up the screen while we're building, because that would be make for a not clean building environment. So moving on with some of the other matches, let's see. Oh, of course, this match was quite something. Belgium beat Senegal 3-2, and it was definitely quite a big shock. Senegal going into the match, while they weren't favorites, they had played extremely well considering that they had faced two of the best teams of the tournament, Norway and Senegal, and then they had absolutely convincingly won versus Iraq 5-0 to make their way into the round of 32. And Belgium had not looked convincing at all in the tournament whatsoever. They had put up draws versus Iran and Egypt, and the only reason they even got through the group was because they were able to beat New Zealand. And just about anybody is able to beat New Zealand. So that's basically the only reason they ended up topping their group. No offense to New Zealand or anybody from New Zealand watching, but New Zealand's definitely main sport is rugby, so the football team isn't all that good, except for, of course, their main starting striker, Chris Wood, who is a Premier League proven player. So moving on from that, though, in the Senegal versus Belgium match, Senegal managed to go up 2-0, and it looked pretty much clear for them going on to the round of 16 to face off versus the United States. But then Belgium subbed on their best player, who was half injured, but he was still good to play for a few minutes each match, Romelu Lukaku, and they came back in the last couple minutes of the match. In the 88th minute and the 90th minute, they scored two last-minute goals, basically, to bring it back to level to 2-2, which sent it to extra time. And then in extra time, they were awarded a penalty for a dubious challenge. And it is a little bit questionable if it was a penalty, but for the most part, it seems to have been, unfortunately, the correct decision for them. So then Belgium scored their penalty and they went through the next round. So it was definitely a big shame that Senegal went out, considering how well they were doing. And it definitely would have been interesting to see them face off versus the United States. And if they had won that, it would have been interesting to see them face off versus Spain. But again, that's more to do with Spain, which we'll get to later, because that's what the main preview is supposed to be about. So it looks like we have a couple more comments to read through. Oh, no, it's the same comments. All right. So moving on to a couple other matches now. Let's see. We have Brazil versus Japan. That was an exciting match. Japan opened the scoring, but then Brazil did what Brazil do, and they managed to come back and win 2-1. Brazil definitely looked better during the match, and they, of course, being as dramatic as they are, scored a 90 plus 5-minute winner to win the match. Let me just find out where I put the minifigure. It looks like we're done with bag one. And so we're done with bag one. So this is what we have for bag one. It's a small stand with the minifigure on it, and then a sign that says 2026, or it tries to anyway. And then, yeah, it's a pretty nice little stand. Then we can now finally get started on the World Cup itself. Let me just gather up these extra pieces and put them somewhere. Definitely should have thought of that beforehand. When I go on my first intermission in like half an hour, I'm definitely going to need to get some sort of small box or bag to put these inside of. For now, though, we'll just shove them to the side and hope none of them get lost. Right, so now we have bag two of the World Cup. Yes, agreed. The stand does look very cool. That would be it's a very nice inclusion to have with it, including with the exclusive pieces it has, which are cool for the World Cup. it'll definitely be interesting to see if I can put out a review on this afterwards, after the live streams. Okay, now we have bag 2 here. Oh yeah, of course we preserve the brick separator. Brick separator is always useful no matter what. See, where does the stand go? I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm guessing it goes in front of the World Cup or right next to it, just as a small side addition to it. Some nice side build. Looking at a couple of other matches now, we have the Ivory Coast. Oh, here, let's just scroll down so I can look through the information. Right, we have Ivory Coast versus Norway. That was an excellent match. I was rooting for Ivory Coast to win or Norway to either, whichever one won. It would have been very interesting to see either one in the round of 16. But in the end, Norway were able to win. So Norway scored first, opening the scoring, but then Ivory Coast scored one of the goals of the tournament with Amad Diallo. Before Norway scored a last-minute goal from Erling Haaland, who is a quite well-known footballer. He's probably their best player and definitely been their player of the tournament so far. And then that's how Norway were able to get through to the next round. But then I probably don't want to talk about them too much either because they faced off against England. And we need to save that for the match preview tomorrow when we talk about England versus Argentina, which will be very interesting. That match has a lot of history behind it. A lot of definitely stuff I'm going to need to talk about, especially considering the, over 50-year rivalry between the two nations, especially considering the geopolitical implications of the match. We'll get to that tomorrow. So moving on to the next match, we have France versus Sweden. This one was quite easy for France. Sweden's manager is former Premier League manager. He was very well respected in the Premier League, even though he didn't do all that good at any of the jobs he was at. He managed at first at Brighton and Hove Albion, where he was basically just a draw machine, drawing matches 1-1 for fun. And then we also had jobs at Chelsea and West Ham, where he was abject failure. So then he got the Sweden job, and he's done half decently at Sweden. However, I definitely didn't expect them to make even close to make it past France, and that came true as we saw at the World Cup when France beat Sweden 3-0 with a brace from Mbappe and a goal from Bradley Barcola. So just looking at some more of the comments in the chat. Wow, how'd they win? I think you're referring to Ivory Coast versus Norway. So how they won was with a very late winner from Erling Haaland. I can't remember exactly how the goal went. I think it was a header, but I'm not quite sure. I've watched too much football at the World Cup already, so some of the goals mixed together, especially from some of the top scorers who score a lot. So moving past the France versus Sweden match, France easily beat Sweden 3-0. And then, next match, we have Mexico versus Ecuador. This was also a good match. There's also some geopolitical tension to this match because of previous events. I'm not sure if we'll get into that right now because it's not that relevant, but I think not relevant to the channel, of course. So we won't talk about that. But for what happened in the match was Mexico won 2-0. Mexico were playing at home. They're one of the co-hosts at the World Cup, of course. The World Cup is hosted between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And Mexico playing at home in the Estadio Azteca were able to beat Ecuador quite comfortably, 2-0. Ecuador didn't really look as good as you'd think they would, considering that they're widely respected and considered a good team. But Mexico were able to just score 2 early goals and then pretty much see out the match. It was just 2 early goals and an early 30-minute blitz, and then after that they just waited it out, and they pretty easily beat Ecuador, even though they did try to attack. Ecuador's attack in particular was very poor, and they definitely did poorly considering that just a few days before this match they had won against Germany in a shock victory. So in the Germany match, everything was going against Ecuador. Basically, the only way they went through the next round was a win. They needed to win versus Germany, who are considered an extremely formidable opponent in football. So that was looking quite unlikely, really. And during the match, it started horrifically for Ecuador when they went 1-0 down due to a goal for Germany that really shouldn't have even stood. One of the German players kicked one of Ecuador's players in the head when they were challenging for the ball, and it definitely should have been disallowed. That's not like that. I got away. And it definitely should have been disallowed for a violent, reckless play in the build-up. However, shockingly, it was allowed to stand with Germany going 1-0 up, which was a very was not ideal for Ecuador, to say the least. However, Ecuador were able to fight back instantly with one of their players, I think it was Angulo, scoring a great goal a few minutes later. He plays for Sunderland in the Premier League to equalize. And then later in the match, off a corner, Ecuador scored a header from, I think the player's name was Plata. Yes, that was the player's name. And it was a great goal, a great header off a corner, and they were able to come back and win the match going to the next round. So considering how good they did in that match, it was kind of expected that Ecuador would put up a bit more of a fight versus Mexico, but they didn't. They didn't do that well. So apparently I'm supposed to repeat this build 4 times. So we'll just keep talking while building this again and again and again. So moving on to the next match now. There's England versus the Congo. This was quite an exciting match. So Congo opened the scoring almost instantly in the 7th minute when they scored a goal from their player. I think he's a forward. Let me see what his name is. Brian Sipanga. Yes, he plays in La Liga for the Spanish club Almeria, and Congo squad has been surprisingly extremely good. They I think to qualify they beat Nigeria, and Nigeria are a pretty big team in footballing terms with a lot of the best players from the African continent. So it was definitely shocking when they went out to Congo. But Congo as well have their own extremely competent team with players from many of the top leagues like the Premier League, La Liga. I think they have a couple players from out in the German area, Central Europe, and Central European leagues. And then they, of course, have some of their own domestic players playing for the team as well. So DR Congo scored almost instantly, which was quite a shock to England, I'm guessing. And England tried coming back throughout the whole match, but Congo's goalkeeper, Mpasi, played extremely well. He played a great match, and Congo were winning going up into about the 75th minute. It was looking like England were going home, but that was not to be when Harry Kane scored a very late brace, as the Congolese players were unfortunately definitely getting tired by the end of the match. You could see they were defending so well, but then by the end of the match, they were just all completely tired, and unfortunately, they went out. It definitely would have been quite a shock and quite a story if they were able to go through versus England. But yeah, and then England won that match. So moving on to the next round of 32 match, we're just covering all the knockout matches because all the group stage matches that would take way too long, and I'm sure a lot of you wouldn't care about that too much because it was very tedious. I just covered a few of those main matches, like the Ecuador upset versus Germany. That was a big match. But moving on, we have. I guess I could just cover really quick before we move on a couple of the main shock teams that went out in the group stage. Not Ecuador. Uruguay absolutely crashed and burned. They drew with Cape Verde. They drew with Saudi Arabia, and then they lost to Spain, going out with only 2 points. They're basically considered one of the heavyweights at the World Cup, even considering their small population. They've always punched above their weight, so seeing them go out like that was definitely quite a shock. Another team who absolutely underperformed was Turkey, who everybody had them as dark horses for the World Cup, and everybody has them as dark horses for basically every tournament because on paper their team is absolutely stacked. They have some of the a lot of great players, a lot of them who play in top leagues. They have their star player plays for the Spanish club Real Madrid, who are one of the biggest clubs in the world, and the player as well, of course, is excellent. So a lot of people had Turkey down to finish top of the group against the United States, Paraguay, and Australia. And all three of those teams, even though they're all decent, are compared to Turkey on paper, they seem to not be that good. But then Turkey proceeded to lose to the United. No, they lost to who did they lose to first? They lost to Australia 2-0. They lost to Paraguay 1-0. And then the only match they won was the one where they were already eliminated versus the United States. It was quite shocking their losses versus Australia and Paraguay, as they had so much possession and so many shots, but they looked completely harmless in front of goal. They looked like a puppy in front of goal, basically. They weren't going to do anything. So that was unfortunate for Turkey, and they crashed out in the group stages. And I think those are the two main teams who crashed out in the group stage. If there's any other big teams that I'm forgetting, I'll try to mention them later. But moving back to the round of 32 now, right? Where were we at? The United States versus Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that match was pretty straightforward. Basically, the United States scored once, then they got a red card, and they were still looking like they were winning, and then they scored again. And even though the United States were playing with 10 men, Bosnia and Herzegovina never looked like even scoring once. They definitely didn't even try, basically. Or maybe it's not that they didn't try, it's just that the quality wasn't there to challenge for the match. So they lost 2-0, not much to say there. Next up, we have Spain's match, but we are going to save that for later for the preview, which will be taking place maybe in 20 minutes or so once we finish going through all these knockout matches. Portugal versus Croatia, we talked about that already. Switzerland versus Algeria, similar to the US versus Bosnia match. Switzerland scored once, then they scored again, and Algeria did not look threatening at all during the entire match. It was extremely straightforward with a win for Switzerland. Nothing much to be said. Moving to the next match, we have Australia versus Egypt. This was definitely a very interesting match. I definitely saw a lot of commentary about how the match was considered dire, but honestly, I think that was a pretty decent match. First, Egypt opened the scoring, and then they scored an own goal after that. So it was going 1-1 into extra time, and nobody scored again, and it went to a penalty shootout where Egypt were able to comfortably beat Australia after Australia sent up a pair of their center backs to take penalties. Center backs are the most defensive players and don't have as much training with the penalties in any capacity. So the fact that they went ahead and do that was definitely self-explosive in a manner of speaking. And it was definitely not the best option. Appears I misspelled a couple of these, so I'll just fix those real quick. So yeah, that's how Australia finished. Ended up going out of the World Cup, and they definitely put in respectable performances. They didn't lose too badly versus the U.S. They drew with Paraguay, and they got a shocking 2-0 win versus Turkey, which we just talked about earlier. And they definitely did better than a lot of people expected. A lot of people before the tournament had them going out bottom of the group, and they should at least be feeling proud that they got to the round of 32. But Egypt were definitely a higher quality team versus them. Moving on from that, we have probably one of the matches of the tournament. Let me just put this together before we talk about it. Something appears to be missing. Oh, of course. There we go. All good now. Oh, we have another comment real quick. Let's see. Thanks for sharing all your football info while working on the World Cup set. Thanks. I appreciate it very much. I thought it was definitely a great opportunity to talk about football while we were building the World Cup, and probably the only time that we'll be getting to talk about football on the Lego channel. Of course, if anybody has any questions about Legos as well, though, we're open to those during this, as this is, of course, a Lego channel. For now, though, we will continue with building the World Cup. So, talking about that main great match, probably match of the tournament so far, we had Argentina versus Cape Verde. This was a absolutely stellar match. So before the match, Argentina were extremely heavy favorites, right? They're the defending champions of the World Cup. They looked in the group stages. They looked absolutely amazing. They played against Algeria, Austria, and who was the third team they played against? Jordan, right? And Messi, they're widely considered one of the best players in the world, and one of the current, probably the current, one of the two best, probably the best player of the modern era. Um, Scored a great deal of goals for them, 6 goals in the group stages, including a couple of excellent free kicks. So Argentina were looking very good coming into this match. Cape Verde as well, though. Even they had to put up some massive results in the group stages to get through. They drew versus Spain, which we'll talk about later when we preview Spain, but it was definitely considered a extremely large effort for them to draw versus Spain, with their goalkeeper Vozinha putting in a uh, basically generational performance for them, making a ton of saves, and all their defenders putting in an extremely uh, heroic performance as they defended against Spain and only committed one foul during the whole match, which is basically unheard of, considering that most teams that have to defend a lot also have to commit some fouls to keep themselves in the game. So that was definitely a big performance from them. Then after that, Cape Verde managed to miraculously draw versus Uruguay 2-2 with an amazing free kick from one of their players, and then another nice long shot goal from one of their players, which was able to see them through. Uh, and then they finished the group stage with the draw versus Saudi Arabia, and they were able to just get through in second place to face off versus Argentina. So for this match, a lot of people already had Argentina down as clear victors. Oh, we have a comment coming in. Okay. It's supposed to be going on here. Might have messed up in the build. Oh, I see. Dang it. That's going to be a bit hard to take off. Just give it a second. We'll use the brick separator. This is why we have the brick separator. It's a great thing that's included in a lot of Lego sets. Definitely love it. And I just have to figure out where these things are supposed to go. Might have built this wrong. That would be unfortunate. Definitely too focused talking about football. All right, I think we're supposed to take off these blue bars, and then we can put them on the other side so that we can fit on the pieces. Now we just have to figure out how to get them off. Definitely unfortunate that happened. All right, let's see if we don't want to break this either. Delicate operation. I'm going to take this off screen for a second so I can get a better look at it, and then we'll get back to the build. Just one moment, please, so I can fix these pieces up. Got it. All right, we're back. Let's just put all these pieces back up together now. Let's figure out how exactly we're supposed to build this. Right. That goes there. And we put that on incorrectly again, which is great. One moment again, everybody, so I can put these pieces back on correctly. Just take one moment to put these pieces back on. Well, we got to take them off first, of course. This is, of course, why Lego includes brick separators in case of situations like this. So a big shout out to all brick separators. Okay, we got the piece off now. Now let's just make sure we don't lose it. Right. Now we've got everything back together. Let me just put it together real quick. Put that back in place. Don't want to put that there. Put that there. Huh. And we're back. All right, let's try to put these together on the correct way this time. And I say now that we are just about done with the first bag. Right. So this is the first bag. This is the base for the World Cup. Definitely took longer than I expected. We might be here building for definitely a few days if it's taking this long. But once I run out of football to talk about, then I'll definitely be focusing on the build a lot more. So that'll speed things up. We'll build one more bag, and then we'll go to intermission, and then we'll continue with the build. So let's get to bag 3 now. Bag 3 is, of course, hiding from us right now. We'll find it in a minute. All right, bag 3 has been found. Let's see if we have any new comments. Let's see, is it going to be a big puzzle piece at the end? There might be a puzzle piece. I'm not exactly quite sure, though. So we'll see as we build. Right. So here now we have bag three, and we'll continue talking about the football in just a second. Need to make sure everything's good here with the build. Yep, build looks all good. We can keep building. So, right, where were we with Cape Verde versus Argentina? So everybody had. Oh, must have missed a spot. It's a bit strange. So everybody had Argentina down to win. Very easily, right? Argentina's chance of winning was something like 80%, maybe even 85% before the match. But then the match turned out to be a lot more exciting than that. Messi scored early as expected, and so how the match looked going into the second half was that would be a comfortable win for Argentina. They'd score a couple goals, and that would be that. But Cape Verde came back. They scored a goal through one of their players, Duarte. I'm not exactly sure how the goal went, but I'm pretty sure it was a nice goal from about the edge of the box. And that definitely made the match a lot more interesting. Because Cape Verde weren't just defending this match, they were actually doing a lot of attacking and creating a ton of chances versus Argentina, the defending world champions, which was a shock. Argentina, as well, definitely looked rattled during the match. They had to defend quite a bit versus Cape Verde, which is shocking and not expected at all before the match. So the match being 1-1 went into extra time, and Cape Verde kept attacking as well. But Argentina also turned up the gas when it came to extra time, and they scored a goal through one of their strikers, Lautaro Martinez. And so after that, it looked all done and dusted, right? It looked like Cape Verde were out of gas, and that Argentina were just get settled with a quick extra time win. But it did not end there because Cape Verde scored probably one of the goals of the tournament from one of their players named Sidney Lopez Cabral, who at the corner of the box from the side curled the ball in at an absolutely insane angle. And that's definitely going to be one of the World Cup goals to remember. And I definitely expect to see it in all those compilations you see after World Cups of the best goals that were there. So then Cape Verde were tied with Argentina 2-0. And then they did sit back a little bit after that. And Argentina were able to score a third goal off a corner, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure it was an own goal from one of Cape Verde's players. It was definitely going to be heartbreaking for them. But the match didn't quite end there as Cape Verde kept relentlessly attacking. Argentina basically looked like a small team defending a lead against a big team with Cape Verde coming after them. And it was definitely an exciting last 15 minutes of the match as Cape Verde kept attacking and attacking, and Argentina had to keep putting in last-ditch defensive challenges. And near the end of the match, Cape Verde even had a free kick taken by the same player and about the same position that they scored in for their second goal. And he almost scored the exact same goal, which was saved by Argentina's goalkeeper, which was definitely a big save that kept them in it, as we can see from Argentina still being in it up to now in the semifinals. So Argentina were just about able to keep defending, and they won the match to end 3-2. And overall, that definitely stood out as one of the matches of the tournament. See, I saw a clip of that goal and it was very exciting. Yes, definitely, it was a great goal. If you're interested in seeing the goal, you can look up on YouTube or on Google or on any other search platform, DuckDuckGo even. Look up goal by Sidney Lopez Cabral versus Argentina, and you'll see the goal. It's definitely a great goal. See more comments? Is it going to be a big... Oh, wait, these are the same comments. Sorry, everybody. Let's just take those off the screen now. Right. So based on the pace we're going at, I'm thinking we can get about 7 bags done before the live stream's end. That'll be pretty decent. If it's taking too long to build, I'm thinking I could possibly build a couple of the less exciting bags off screen and then just come back for, when we're finishing this out or for the more exciting parts. But yeah, as for now, we're definitely going to try to get at least bag 5 or 6 before we finish for the day. There's a quick fix to make on this set. Some of the pieces are a little offset for some reason. So moving on to some of the other matches. Colombia versus Ghana. It's pretty straightforward to win from Ghana. No, not Ghana. Ghana lost. Straightforward to win from Colombia. Ghana didn't look like threatening at all. I don't think they had a single shot on target for the whole match. Colombia just scored early, and then after that, they didn't really do all that much. And then Colombia, and then they kind of just let Ghana have the ball because Ghana really weren't going to do anything with it, and they didn't. So easy win for Colombia, basically. Just to make sure all the builds happening on screen. Moving on to the round of 16 now. Oh, wait, I forgot. I missed one of the round of 32 matches. Canada versus South Africa. Pretty dull match. Not much going on. And then in the last minute, Canada scored a winner going on to the next round. So there's that. Round of 16 now. We have Canada versus Morocco. Morocco and Canada were pretty evenly matched. And then Morocco won. And that's about all there is to it. Canada looked decent, but they never really looked all that much like winning. And that came to fruition. Make sure not to hit the mic by accident. And so next we have the France game. We'll save that for a little bit so that we don't spoil it. Oh, I did actually cover one of the France games already, but we'll try not to do that while we're waiting for the preview, which I'll be getting started on in a little bit. Brazil versus Norway. This was definitely an interesting match. Brazil were favorites going into it because they're Brazil. They're always favorites at the World Cup, basically. Everybody always expects them to do well. And Norway were, I guess, a little bit of underdogs, you could say. A lot of people, including myself at this point, weren't convinced by their team because one of their only best players was Haaland compared to the rest of their squad. But they definitely put in a shift versus Brazil, and it resulted in make sure this is all done correctly. All right, let's all put it now. And it resulted in quite a shocking result when Norway beat Brazil 2-1. And Brazil had their chances, and they didn't take them, so they didn't win. Brazil had a penalty given near the beginning of the match, and they really should have scored it. And I was thinking they were going to give it to their player Vinicius Jr. He's one of their best players. He's not that good at penalties. He's not great at penalties. However, he was their top scorer, and I thought they were going to help him score a few more goals. But instead, they gave it to a different player, Bruno Guimaraes, who's okay at penalties as well. But I definitely wasn't thinking it was a good idea to give it to him, and that turned out to be true when he absolutely ballooned. No, he didn't balloon his penalty. He missed it. It was a very weak penalty that Norway's keeper was able to save. That was Brazil's chance, and they blew it. And after that, they had a couple more decent chances, which they also flubbed. And then Norway punished them for it, right? Norway scored 2 late goals by Haaland in the 79th minute. He had one. I'm pretty sure it was a header. And then in the 90th minute, he scored a pretty insane goal from the edge of the box, where he basically just stopped and then shot it in like I don't know, a Terminator, I guess. That's the joke about him, that all the goals he scores are robotic because he scores so many. So there Brazil were down 2-0, and they really didn't look like doing anything. And the only goal they got was a consolation goal in the 90 plus 10 minute. It didn't even look like that much of a penalty, but it was basically just a pity penalty for Brazil's player Neymar Jr. to score for one last hurrah, one last World Cup goal before his retirement. He scored it. It was ended 2-1. Brazil did decently, but at the end of the day, they ended up losing. So Brazil are definitely going to be disappointed by that performance. This is Brazil's worst performance at a World Cup in over 30 years, I think, since 1980s, I think, when they finished at the same stage in the round of 16. Oh, it's not much you can see there. All right, there we go. All right, that's all taken care of. Now, moving on to the other round of 16 matches, we have Mexico versus England. This was an absolutely insane match. Mexico opened the match in the ascendancy, and they had almost all the momentum in the first half. But then England, off of a very quick break and a couple mistakes from Mexico's defense, scored 2 goals extremely quickly in succession, which absolutely shocked Mexico, considering that they looked much the better team so far. Mexico were not deterred by this, and they absolutely attacked as hard as possible in the remaining minutes of the first half, because both England's goals were in the 36th and 38th minutes. So Mexico definitely went for it. They didn't just slouch over. Oh, I missed a piece, apparently. Where does this come from? Oh, down there. Okay. So Mexico relentlessly attacked in the remainder of the first half, and they got one back, right? They scored 1 goal from Julian Quinones in the 42nd minute, and they almost equalized right before the halftime. But then the whistle came, and yeah, that kind of paused Mexico's momentum. I'm guessing this is an extra piece. So yeah, that's how that ended. And then in the second half, Mexico came out determinedly again, attacking, but they were not able to get another goal. England had a red card given for a dangerous tackle on one of Mexico's players, but then Mexico absolutely flubbed their advantage by giving England a penalty, which they promptly scored with Harry Kane putting it away. Mexico were awarded a penalty a little bit later, and they brought it back to 3-2. And then Mexico just relentlessly attacked for the last 30 minutes of the match or so with quite insane strategy versus England. They just chucked on 3 center forwards and just kept trying to cross the ball into the box, which did not work out considering the height and physicality of the English center backs that the England manager subbed on just for that type of situation. And England ended up losing. No, not England. Mexico ended up losing. Oh, I just remembered I should have saved that match for tomorrow's preview about Argentina versus England. I'll just talk about it again tomorrow. Let's move on for the next match. Portugal versus Spain. We'll save that for the Spain preview a little later. United States versus Belgium. This match was pretty straightforward. Belgium won 4-1. There was no contest whatsoever. The United States surprisingly did a lot worse than everybody thought they would, and they crashed out of the tournament. So now we're going to be taking our first intermission. I'll be back in about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll keep building with bag 4. So let me just put up a sign that says it's intermission. We don't want everybody to leave. All right, there we go. So we'll be back in a minute or two or three, and see you all in a minute or two. Hello, everybody. We are back from our intermission and we'll be getting started with the build again. If you like the background music, make sure to let me know in the chat, and I might leave it on while we're streaming just because. But yeah, we'll get started with the build now. All right, getting started with bag 4 now. Looks like we're definitely going to have a little bit more detailing going on and whatnot. All right, we need to make sure it's in the camera. There we are. New comment. Let's take a look. I like the background music. Right, so let's leave the background music on then while we're talking. Let's make sure it doesn't overcut my voice. There we are. Now we have the background music on while the live stream is going. I hope everybody enjoys it. Hopefully it'll repeat. So we'll just finish up with a couple more steps here before we keep previewing the matches. We have a couple more matches we can go over. Right, before we get to the main preview. So we all right, the music is repeating. Right, let's keep it on while we're live streaming then, just to add some more dynamism to the live stream. So we had Switzerland versus Colombia. This match was a kind of a snooze fest, actually. Not too much went on during this match. Colombia definitely need to, well, how the match ended was 0-0, and it wasn't an exciting 0-0 either. Both teams did not do much, although Colombia definitely had a couple shots for what they could have done. They could have won it. In any case, though, the match went to penalties, and Colombia lost on penalties. So Colombia definitely going to have to hang their heads there because they were the better team going into the match. They had higher quality players. They had probably some of their best players in quite a while. This is their first World Cup since 2018. And so it's definitely a shame to see them go out like this versus Switzerland when they should have done a lot better. Switzerland, of course, can definitely feel proud of themselves for that win. They put up a good fight versus Colombia, and they were able to grind out a win versus them. Not a lot of teams are able to do that with the 0-0s and then going to penalties, but Switzerland did good, especially since Colombia missed a couple penalties that they should have scored at the end in the penalty shootout. As I built it backwards? No, what did I do? Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I seem to have put the pieces in the wrong spots. Take this off screen again so we can fix this. Hopefully the brick separator can help us. Well, that's unfortunate. And once again, like always, the brick separator has saved us. So it's always good to have a brick separator trusty when you're building any type of set. Thankfully for us, a brick separator came included here, which is nice. So apparently we're supposed to build 2 of these and put them on the set. So we'll do that real quick. We'll finish the last couple of matches we need to go over, and then we'll get to the main meat and potatoes of the preview for Spain versus France World Cup semifinal. Right, we're making good progress so far on this bag. Right. I think we're all done with this step now, everybody. So now we can get to the next couple steps, and I think the main preview is here. So yeah, all the matches left have to do with the exact teams we're talking about today. So now we'll be doing a preview of the France versus Spain match. Before we do that, of course, we're going to talk about each match that France and Spain had to get to this stage of the World Cup. And we're going to start with, let me see which team was in first. We're going to be starting with Spain, right? So Spain's group at the beginning of the World Cup consisted of Cape Verde, Uruguay, Saudi Arabia, and then Spain themselves. So to get out of the group, Spain had to finish within the top two or be one of the best one of the eight best third place teams. So Spain played 3 matches at this World Cup. They played in the group stage of the World Cup. They opened their World Cup by playing against Cape Verde. And Cape Verde, as we mentioned earlier, put in many valiant performances during this World Cup, and this one was no exception, where they were able to hold Spain to a draw. Now, Spain's team is widely considered one of the best at the World Cup, one of the 4 best, actually. So the fact that Cape Verde were able to hold them to a draw was absolutely astonishing. Cape Verde's defensive display was probably one of the best we've seen at this World Cup, and out of previous World Cup, one of the best there too. So it was definitely a big shock to see them pull this off. Spain, on the other hand, focusing on them, looked quite poor offensively. They couldn't really do anything, and they did the classic Spanish tactic of trying to pass your opponent to death. It's very common for the Spain national team to try to do this, and it did not work because other than a few chances that they were able to challenge the goalkeeper with, and the goalkeeper himself had a man of the match performance, putting in a few saves. But France did not threaten as much as they should have with the quality that they had. So that's how that match went. Moving on to the next match now, Spain played versus Saudi Arabia. So let's just pull up the score from this one. Well, it'll load while we build. So Spain put in a much improved performance versus Saudi Arabia. They beat the Saudi Arabian team 4-0. There was not too much to say there. Spain actually put in a good performance for once. There's not too much to say. Spain played quite well. The goals scored were by Lamine Yamal scored 1, Mikel Oyarzabal scored 2, and then Saudi Arabia scored a own goal, all in the first half for the most part. The 4th goal was in the second half. But yeah, quite easy win for Spain. So then after that, Spain's 3rd match of the group stage was versus Uruguay. This was a very contentious match. Uruguay needed to win to even have a chance of advancing to the next stage, and they definitely were looking to win by any means necessary, which included playing, unfortunately, a quite physical game against Spain. Spain didn't need. Spain could have gone through without even a win. They could have lost, and they would have been just fine. But they still put in a decent performance. They scored 1 goal early on, and then after that, I guess you could say they kind of tapped out. They didn't put too much effort into the match to hold on to it, while Uruguay kept trying to throw everything at the kitchen sink. And this included Uruguay getting a red card late in the match for a very dangerous challenge by one of their players, Canobio. And the match pretty much finished like that. Spain got their 1-0 win. Wasn't too decent, wasn't too hard, and they were through to the next round, top of their group. Looking at the rest of Spain's matches now. First, Spain played in the round of 32 versus Austria. So Austria's team is decent. They played versus Argentina, Algeria, and who else did they play against? Jordan. They got a decent win versus Jordan. They had a respectable loss versus Argentina, and they had a insane 3-3 draw with Algeria. So going into the match, they were looking okay. They probably would have fancied themselves to try to hold Spain to a draw and see if they could perhaps score one in extra time or some other method to get to there to be able to win. Especially considering France's lack of ability to score that well. Unfortunately for Austria, though, that was not to be, as Spain updated their tactics of trying to pass people to death and were actually able to pass until they scored 3 goals versus Austria. It was an easy 3-0 victory for Spain. They scored 2 goals through their striker, Mikhail Oyarzabal, and then 1 goal from their right back, I think it is, or is it a right wing back, Pedro Porro. So for Spain, it was basically just another day at the office, phoning in to get a pretty easy victory versus Austria. And Austria definitely are they definitely should have performed better. However, it was expected beforehand that they would lose to Spain, so that wasn't too much of a surprise. Spain's round of 16 matchup was versus Portugal, which was considered a quite a big match, as it is what would be considered a Iberian derby versus the two countries of the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal versus Spain, geographically located right next to each other. And then it was also considered a big match due to Portugal's star player Cristiano Ronaldo, this potentially being his last match if Portugal were to lose. So this match was definitely extremely anticipated before. Uh, Unfortunately for most neutrals, though, the match was not what was expected. As well, it probably was what was expected. Portugal, before this match, their group consisted of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Colombia, and Uzbekistan. Portugal performed quite poorly in the group. They just barely, uh, they just they convincingly beat Uzbekistan, which wasn't too much of a surprise, but then they unconvincingly drew versus Colombia and DR Congo. Both Colombia and Congo looked like they could have won those matches, and Portugal were in fact lucky to get away uh, with draws versus them. And that's how those matches turned out. So Portugal were not looking too convincing. Their manager is known for making defensive teams out of teams with a lot of attacking talent, and he did the same with Portugal, who had an abundance of attacking talent, but hardly utilized it at all. So Portugal versus Spain was quite dull. Spain tried their tactics of passing people to death as per usual, and Portugal did not do much whatsoever. I don't think they had a shot on target during the whole match. Spain had a few great chances, which were saved by Portugal's goalkeeper. Portugal's goalkeeper is definitely a standout player during the entire tournament. But then Spain subbed on one of their players, Mikel Merino, who scored a last-minute goal to see them through the quarterfinals. There wasn't much Portugal could do about it. Since he scored so late, they only had a couple minutes to try to equalize. They sent a bunch of players forward and tried what teams usually do when they're chasing a goal, but Portugal went out. It wasn't too much of a surprise, and it wasn't too much of a contest either throughout the whole match. Spain, even though they didn't do too much for large periods of time, they had great chances, and when they needed it at the last minute, they capitalized on one of their last great chances and they scored. And Portugal never looked like scoring the whole time, so it was really just a matter of time until Spain wore them down. So that was Spain's round of 16 match. Now moving on to Spain's quarterfinal match, they played versus Belgium, and that was definitely a much more exciting match. Definitely a lot of fluff going through it, but there's definitely large periods of excitement during the match. So Belgium's Belgium did not look convincing at the beginning of the tournament, right? They drew with Iran and Egypt, and were lucky to get a draw in both of those matches. And the only team they convincingly beat was New Zealand. Belgium then survived from within getting an inch of knocked out versus Senegal, coming back from 2-0 down in the last couple dying embers of the match to secure a victory from the jaws of defeat versus Senegal. And then the only match that they convincingly won was versus the US. With that in mind, it was looking like Belgium probably weren't going to put up too much of a fight versus Spain, but of course that didn't go as expected. Spain scored early to go and race into the lead, but then Belgium hit back with a goal just before halftime to level it 1-1. They definitely looked like they were doing good. In the second half, Belgium and Spain were quite even, actually. And even though Spain had the better chances, Belgium looked like they might be able to pull it through to extra time. If they could get it to extra time and penalties, with their best players coming off the bench and being fresh for the extra time, and them also being very good at penalties, there's definitely a chance that had they been able to hold out, that they could have gone through to the next round. Unfortunately for them, though, their first choice goalkeeper, Thibaut Courtois, got injured, and they had to replace him with their second choice goalkeeper. Now, this probably shouldn't have been a problem because their second choice goalkeeper was of an extremely high caliber. He's Manchester United's first choice goalkeeper and performed extremely well for them during the entire season. However, unfortunately for Belgium, he made a mistake during the match. While Spain took a shot, he saved it by deflecting it, spilling it out, and then one of Spain's players collected the rebound and scored off of it, which is definitely a very very poor mistake during the World Cup, and yeah, it's definitely a big one. So unfortunately for Belgium, they went 2-1 down after that. It was a late Spain goal as well, so it's not like they even had time to regroup and try to fight back. So Belgium had about 8 to 10 minutes to try to score one goal. They couldn't do it, though. Spain were just pretty much bunkered down, and there wasn't much Belgium were able to do. And Spain saw out the victory without much fuss. So Belgium are definitely going to be happy they got to the quarterfinals, because at the beginning of the match, at the beginning of the tournament, it looked like they might not even get out of the group. But taking the quarterfinal in isolation, it's definitely going to be disappointing for them that they didn't do better versus Spain, which they really could have done if it wasn't for that very unfortunate one-off mistake that happened to the goalkeeper. It was also unfortunate for Belgium that they had a lot of players injured before the match. They lost one of their They lost one of their midfielders to an anterior cruciate ligament injury in the previous match versus the United States. Before this match, one of their captain got injured, which is obviously a massive blow. And then during the match, like I mentioned earlier, their first choice goalkeeper got injured and had to be substituted from the match. So definitely just a storm of things going wrong for Belgium, as they had to sub on some of their subpar players to fill in the gaps, which definitely left more space for Spain to exploit. So, and that brings us to Spain versus France. And now that we finished talking about Spain, we can talk about France. So we will go back to France's group and see exactly what matches they played. We'll just take a second and we'll keep building while that's going on. Right, so France were in Group I of the World Cup. Group I consisted of France, Senegal, Norway, and Iraq. Group I was widely considered the group of death coming into the tournament, as Senegal, Norway, and France were all high-quality teams. Iraq weren't slouches either, but they definitely weren't. It wasn't considered the group of death because of that. So France's first match was versus Senegal, and this was definitely a very competitive match. In the first half, it was actually Senegal who were the better team, and they definitely had a couple chances to take the lead versus France. So it was actually quite shocking how different the World Cup could have been if Senegal had actually taken those chances at the beginning. But of course, what ifs don't matter in the case of the World Cup. That already happened. France were able to put themselves back together in the second half. After the halftime break, France definitely looked like a changed team. They looked a lot more competent and put together, and they were able to put some goals past Senegal. They scored in the 66th minute, and then in the 82nd minute, both mistakes by Senegal's back line. It was definitely disappointing to see that happen. And then Senegal did score. Senegal being 2-1 down didn't just give up, which is very admirable. They scored a late goal to make it 2-1, and they looked like they might rally for the last few minutes to attack France. But then France promptly responded with not amazing free kick, an amazing goal from Mbappe from way outside the box, maybe 30 yards, which sealed the match up for France in a 3-1 victory. Senegal definitely performed very well, and they're definitely getting close to being an excellent team. But as we can see from their other loss versus Belgium and their loss here, they're not quite there yet. So that was France's first match. France's second match was versus Iraq, which they won 3-0. So if we can just pull up the notes for that, it'll take one quick second. Right, so France's match versus Iraq was quite, even though it was 3-0, that doesn't speak to how competitive the match actually was at the beginning. So the match was initially delayed due to thunderstorms, which was quite a big thing for the match. And when it wasn't delayed, it was stopped halfway through due to the thunderstorms. So how the match started was it was actually quite competitive. Iraq were putting up quite a big fight. They conceded early to Mbappe, but then they also had a couple of pretty decent chances versus France to score a couple. They didn't take them, of course, and when it comes to playing against a team like France, if you don't take the couple chances you have, then you're not going to get any more, and that's exactly what happened. Iraq didn't take their chances, and then France punished that by scoring more. Mbappe scored again. Dembele scored again after the break for the weather, and France easily won 3-0. So while we were talking, we finished bag 4. Now we can get to bag 5. Do we have a comment here? The trophy stand looks big. Yeah, it's pretty big. We're almost done with the base of the set, and hopefully we'll finish a little bit more before we finish for the day. 2 more bags is what we're going for. Try to get the camera all set up. All right, that looks much better. Looks like there's going to be a bit more small details on this one based off the small pieces. Right, let's move to France's final group stage match of the 2026 World Cup. My voice is starting to get a little hoarse here, so just give me a minute. Right, so France's final group stage match of the World Cup was versus Norway. Now, this was widely considered to be one of the top matches of the group stages before the World Cup. Norway's star player, Erling Haaland, versus France's star player, Kylian Mbappe, 2 of the most well-known and well-respected strikers in modern football. That is not how this match went, though. Norway rested almost their entire team. They were already through to the second round, and they probably thought even if they fielded their best team, they might lose versus France. So they just rested all their best players, and they just played a team of their second choice players. So France though decided to play their first choice team, and they quite easily beat Norway. It was definitely not what was expected before the match, and it was a pretty easy win for France, 4-1. They scored one of their players, Ousmane Dembele, scored a hat trick within 20 minutes, one of the fastest ever at the World Cup. One of Norway's players scored one early goal to draw it before France got their other 3 goals, and France won quite easily 4-1. So now we can move on to France's knockout stage matches. Looks like we're running a little low on time here, so I might go a little faster with the building and with the preview so that we don't run out of time. Definitely talked a lot longer than I expected before. A lot to talk about with the World Cup, and we'll hopefully have more tomorrow. So moving on to France's knockout stage matches here after they topped their group with 9 points. The first team they played in the round of 32, if I remember correctly, was I can't remember, so we'll just look to see if we can find it. It was versus Sweden. I remember now. We talked about it earlier. So France definitely put up a good performance versus Sweden. Not only good, I'd say it was absolutely great. Sweden stood no chance from the beginning. France controlled the match throughout almost its entirety, and they easily beat Sweden 3-0. It consisted of 2 goals from Mbappe and 1 from Bradley Barcola. There's not really too much to say about the match because France were just so dominant during the match. Except for their first match versus Senegal in the first 45 minutes, France looked dominant through all the matches so far in the World Cup. Then after they played versus after they played versus Sweden in the round of 32, they played versus Paraguay in the round of 16. This match was definitely very cagey. France's team are extremely high quality, and Paraguay, while they have some great players, are nowhere near as good as France are. Paraguay were able to just about get past Germany with a valiant defensive performance, and they tried the same thing versus France. Knowing that they couldn't beat France technicality-wise, Paraguay utilized a great deal of physicality. The ref definitely should have tried to rein it in a little bit better. However, Paraguay played to their strengths, and they did what they were supposed to do in a situation like that to even try to get past France. Because had Paraguay tried playing any type of open football, France would have almost assuredly beat them 4-0 or some other score, which would have been insane. So Paraguay did what they had to do to try to get the win versus France. So they were able to hold France for almost an entire match from scoring. It was definitely a very defensive, I guess the best word for it would be a very resolute defensive performance. However, it was not to be for Paraguay as they conceded a late penalty to the France when one of their players fouled. I think I can't remember quite who was that he fouled, but he fouled a French player in the box, giving France a penalty, which was promptly dispatched by Mbappe without much fuss. Paraguay, who didn't look like creating anything during the whole match, they were just sitting back hoping to Paraguay were just sitting back hoping to draw 0-0 and drag it to penalties. Unfortunately for them, though, they had almost no attacking output. And even at the last minutes when they were trying to attack, they could only put together one half-decent chance. And France were able to go through quite easily. It wasn't too hard for them. Now, let me just figure out what's wrong here with this build so that we can get this piece through. All right, we're going to be taking it off screen for a second so I can look it up close. All right, then the problem has been found. It was built in the incorrect way. We'll fix that up real quick. Definitely just give you a bit difficult because of all the pieces on top, but we got that. Just make sure the mic's not muted. Right, okay. We have a couple more comments. Wow, looks good. Thank you. Pieces for something. I think you're talking about the pieces we were just looking at. Yep. Right, we fixed up what was wrong with the pieces. Now we can put this all back together. We almost finished talking about all of France's matches just on time. One last quarterfinal match to go before we can get to the true preview of and my prediction for France versus Spain. All right, let's see if this is all in order now. There's still an issue. We probably built it incorrectly again. Just take this off real quick to see what exactly is correct here. All right, so the issue was found. We had an extra piece added in by accident. Let's just take these apart now with our trusty brick separator. Brick separator has done excellent work again, as it always does. So now we can get on with the set. Right, that should be the correct way to build it now, and hopefully there will be no more issues with this piece going where it's supposed to. And there, it now holds the thing in place, so we can continue with the next step. Let's try to pick up the pace here a little bit. We're running a bit low on time for the stream, and I don't want to keep all of you guys here watching too long. So, France's last knockout match before this current one was their quarterfinal matchup versus. It was a quarterfinal matchup versus Morocco. This match was dropped a piece. So this match versus Morocco was not as hard as you might expect. Morocco's national team has definitely improved quite a bit over the last few years, and they're definitely deserving of their spot in the quarterfinals. They're definitely one of the 8 best teams in the world. With that being said, though, they still weren't quite on the level of France, and even though it would have been nice if they tried attacking versus France, understandably, Morocco tried to be very defensive versus France. They didn't even have a shot in the first half, and they were basically just bunkering in to try to drag it all the way to penalties. And if it had gone to penalties, I honestly think that Morocco would have won. Their goalkeeper, Yassine Bono, is a penalty save specialist, and all their players are fairly competent at taking penalties. But the most important factor, of course, was their goalkeeper, who's an expert at penalty saves. Unfortunately for them, though, that just wasn't to be, as their defense did, in fact, break down a couple of times, and France were able to score twice. France scored in the 60th minute with a goal from Mbappe, and then he scored again in the 66th minute with a goal from Ousmane Dembele. And even after they had scored these goals, Morocco, they did try to attack a little bit, but they just didn't look like scoring, and they couldn't put in the threat to win versus France. What was especially bad for Morocco was that their star striker, I think his name is Saibari, was injured for this match, and he was basically their only conduit for attack, their most important attacking conduit. So without him, they just didn't really have a chance at scoring, which is unfortunate for Morocco. But that brings us, with France winning that match in the quarterfinal, that brings us to the semifinal match between Spain and France. So just breaking down this semifinal match, the semifinal between Spain and France will be taking place tomorrow at noon Pacific time, and it'll be happening in the Dallas Stadium in Arlington, Texas, in the United States. This match is basically one of the most highly anticipated possible matchings at the World Cup. Spain and France are two of the highest ranked teams in the world in the top four, and this match is actually technically speaking, if we're going by technical metrics, the match with the highest elo possible between two teams at the World Cup ever, which means it's basically the two highest quality teams as ranked by FIFA ever. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're the two best teams ever, but if we're speaking just by the metrics of what FIFA considers to be the best teams, then it is technically the best teams ever competing for these two matches right now if you combine their two totals. So this is definitely going to be a very interesting match. If we look at their two performances over the tournament so far, uh, France have been extremely convincing throughout their entire run, except for the first 45 minutes versus Senegal, where they looked like very shaky and they could go behind. France have dominated basically every match they've played. They comfortably beat Senegal in the second half, then they comfortably beat Iraq, and then they comfortably beat Norway, and they very easily beat Sweden. And then, even though it was uncomfortable versus Paraguay, France were the better team throughout almost the entire match. And then they comfortably dispatched Morocco, leading up to this semifinal. Spain, on the other hand, have looked slightly less convincing. They've definitely played a few excellent matches. They definitely comfortably beat Saudi Arabia. They played quite well versus Uruguay, even if they only won 1-0. They I forgot who they played in the round of 32 already. Spain played versus Austria. They convincingly beat Austria. They looked a little shaky versus Portugal, but were in control for most of the match. And then they were definitely tested versus Belgium, but were able to just about get by versus them. So that leaves us with, if we take their two performances into comparison, Spain have done good and France have done excellent during this tournament, which makes sense considering that France has some of the highest quality players in the world. With their striker, their entire front line consists of three of the best players of the world, with Ousmane Dembele, Kylian Mbappe, and Michael Olise. So France are definitely a large threat. So Spain as well. They're quite excellent team. However, they don't pose. They're not quite as imposing as France are, compared to if you compare their performances against other teams at the World Cup so far. Especially considering that Spain was held to a draw by Cape Verde. It definitely would have been interesting to see if France go against Cape Verde at some point, which would have been nice, so we could gauge how good Cape Verde are, because they really did put in an admirable performance throughout the entire tournament. With their narrow loss to Argentina, their draw versus Saudi Arabia, their draw versus Uruguay, and their draw versus Spain. That being said, though, we should look at any other information available for the match. So, France are playing with a couple of injuries. France's midfielder Aurelien Tchouameni is injured, and then their other player Marcus Thuram is injured. Thuram has hardly played at this World Cup, so he's not that big of a loss. However, it'll definitely be disappointing for France that their midfielder Aurelien Tchouameni is injured, or possibly suspended, but I think he's just injured though. So they'll be down a couple players. Spain, on the other hand, don't have any player injuries or suspensions. All their players are available, and they'll be able to field their best 11. I mean, the same basically goes for France, though, as even if some of their best players were injured, they have other just as amazing players to replace them in the lineup. So, of course, we should move on to predicted lineups for each team at the World Cup, which we will for the semifinal, which we'll be getting into in just a second after we finished up with these with this step of the World Cup build. So, predicted lineups for the match. We'll be giving it a minute. I need to pull up the entire squad list just so I can make it educative and as a guess for their lineups as possible before deciding on my final prediction for the match. Well, some more information before that on the match beforehand. One of France's key players, Nico Williams, I think is his name, has been not quite been injured, but also not quite fit during the tournament, so hasn't been able to take part, which is in fact a key blow for Spain. Their star player as well, Lamine Yamal has not been quite informed during this World Cup, only scoring 1 goal and not contributing too much else during a lot of the matches. So with that in mind, looking at the predicted 11s for the match for France in goal, I predict. Well, I mean, their lineups will largely be consistent for previous matches. So I'll probably just list the players' names right now. So in goal, we have for France, we have Mike Magnan. We have in defense, we have a back line of Jules Koundé, Daya Upamecano, William Saliba, and Luca Digne. Digne especially is going to be happy that he's playing at this World Cup, considering that he's definitely a utility type player who probably wouldn't have been expecting to play at this World Cup beforehand. In midfield, they will have Manuel Kone, Adrien Rabiot, and Michael Olise. A key player for France is Michael Olise, who has had 5 assists at this World Cup so far, at least, which is absolutely insane, already putting him close to the all-time lists. And then on the front line, they'll have Ousmane Dembele, Desiree Doué, and then as a striker, of course, will be Kylian Mbappe, France's star player. For Spain, their predicted lineup includes, as in goal, Unai Simon. Even if he gets injured, their second choice and third place goalkeeper are both extremely high quality, with David Raya, and then I think their third choice goalkeeper is Joan Garcia. They play for Arsenal and Barcelona respectively, both excellent goalkeepers. In Spain's back line, they'll have most likely Pedro Porro, Pau Cubaressi, Aymeric Laporte, and Cucurella. I forgot Cucurella's first name, so I can't say it right now. Then for their midfield, they'll have Rodri, Pedri, and Dani Olmo, who's going to be the attacking midfielder. And then to round off Spain's front line, they'll have Lamine Yamal, they'll have Alex Baena as the wingers, and then their star striker, who's in the thumbnail of this video actually, is Mikel Oyarzabal. Oyarzabal is quietly one of Spain's best players. He's one of those type players who's never been a megastar on the world stage. However, every time he puts on his national team shirt, he seems to get about 10 times better. So he scored a ton of goals for Spain at this World Cup and previously as well. So he's definitely one to watch out for as well for Spain. So we have the predicted lineups, we have the team news, and now let's think a little more about the teams and their play styles. Spain play a very defensive game. They love to pass, and they have an excellent defense. They've only conceded one goal at this World Cup so far, and that was versus Belgium. France are extremely good at scoring, and they have an extremely good defense. They've only conceded 2 goals so far at this World Cup, and they've scored, let me just total it up real quick in my head, 3, 6, 10, 13, 14. They've scored 16 goals so far at this World Cup. Take that into consideration versus Spain, who've scored about 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 goals at this World Cup, and 4 of them, and a lot of them were versus teams that weren't as good. And France as well have been scoring a lot versus teams that are of a similar quality to them. Just one moment here so we can figure out which pieces I might have forgot to put on. Definitely happens sometimes when I'm talking too much. All right, so we're all good for that one. So we take that into consideration about France and Spain. And then we also see that Spain, although the world ranking doesn't matter as too much, France are considered the best team in the world, and they've proven it over time with how well they've played at almost all times. There appears to be a gap here. Might have missed a piece. Of course. All right, so as I was saying, France have proven that they are, in fact, one of the best teams in the world over time with all of their high-quality performances. If France were to win here, this would be the 3rd final they've reached in a row after 2018 and 2022. If Spain were to win here, this would be their 1st World Cup final since they won it in 2010, and this would only be their 2nd World Cup final ever. So taking this all into consideration and how good France are and how good Spain are, I think that this match will end with a 2-1 win for France. I think that Spain are definitely an excellent team, and they have a recent history of beating France. But this is the World Cup; it's different from other competitions. I think that France are definitely going to play the better team. They're gonna be offensive. They're gonna go for it, and I don't think Spain. I just think that they're just about going to be better than Spain for this one. I think France will score early with the goal from Mbappe. Spain will equalize perhaps later in the second half before France, with another goal from Mbappe, go through to win in the second half. I don't think it'll go to extra time or penalties. So Spain, definitely an excellent team. However, France have just proven every match so far this World Cup that they are just that extra bit better than almost every team at the World Cup so far. They've definitely been better than Spain so far, as well as Spain have done, which is just a testament to how great France's national team is. So I think that this will be a win for France, 2-1 within the 90 minutes, no extra time or penalties needed. But 2 goals from Mbappe for France, like I said earlier, and I think Mbappe will score first, and then Spain will equalize in the second half with a goal from Mikel Oyarzabal, and then France will score a late goal from Mbappe to send them through to the World Cup final for the 3rd time in a row. They'll only be the 3rd team to go to 3 World Cup finals in a row since Germany in the 1970s, I believe, and Belgium and Brazil from 1994 to 2002, who both were in 3 World Cup finals in a row. So that's my prediction for the France versus Spain match. Seeing as we finished the prediction now and we finished bag 5, I'm just thinking if we should do bag 6 or not right now, or we should just call it a day. I'm thinking we just call it a day now at bag 5, and we'll be back tomorrow with a reaction to tomorrow's match as well as a preview for England versus Argentina. So that'll be everything for today's stream, everybody. Well, let's read the comments first before we tune out. It's looking more round for the holder for the cup. That's right. It is looking very round, which makes sense for the World Cup shape, definitely. For tomorrow as well, I plan on touching a little bit more on the history of the World Cup since we're running out of topics to talk about. We're gonna do a match reaction to the France versus Spain match tomorrow. We're going to be doing a preview for Argentina versus England, so expect to see Messi on the thumbnail for tomorrow's live stream. And we're also going to be talking about a little bit about the history of the World Cup. For example, why is it shaped like this? The old World Cup trophy that it replaced, hopefully, we'll get to talk about that. The Jules Rimet trophy, that has an interesting history. And that'll all be very nice to talk about. Last comment. Cool. See you tomorrow, Lego Dude. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in for today's live stream. I appreciate it an absolute ton. We finished a good, decent chunk of the build here. And I've also finished my prediction for the match. So thank you all for tuning in for the 2 hours. I think at the maximum we reached 9 concurrent viewers. So hopefully more people will tune in tomorrow for that live stream. Thank you all for helping me watch Build the World Cup, and now let's await the results of the FIFA World Cup semifinal. Thank you all, and see you tomorrow. I do really appreciate everybody for coming in to watch the stream. So thank all of you. See you for tomorrow's stream, hopefully.